Hey, my name's Ryan. Welcome to a series of video tutorials on the 2015 MCAT Foundational Concept number 3. I paraphrase the concept as, because of the integration of highly specialized organ systems, including the regulatory mechanisms, complex organisms like humans are able to adapt to a constantly changing environment by achieving and maintaining a dynamic state of equilibrium called homeostasis. In other words, the AAMC expects you to have a pretty good understanding of how complex organisms like humans function. And so when I think of homeostasis, the mental image that comes into my head is a bowl of jello. When you disturb a bowl of jello, say by shaking it, it responds by moving in one direction and then compensates by moving in the other direction. And it shakes back and forth in this fashion until it eventually comes to rest in a steady, kind of stable baseline state called equilibrium. So homeostasis then is the stable baseline state at which the body functions best. And part of the body's ability to achieve homeostasis is its ability to send signals and then gather feedback information from those signals between different parts of the body. And it does that kind of classically through nerves in the nervous system. As you know, we sense something with our fingers and that sense gets signaled all the way to our brain, but it also does it through chemical messages called hormones, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the body system concerned with sending and receiving chemical signals is the endocrine system. And the endocrine system is a system of organs called glands that secrete chemical messages called hormones into the blood to provide stimulation and feedback between different parts of the body. And so all I want to do in this video is offer you, a big picture of what the endocrine system is and what it does and who its key players are. And so in order to do that, I've kind of sketched up a picture here of the Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci. And other than being the quintessential image of physiology, I want it to serve as a reference point for us as we study the endocrine system, because maybe more so than most systems, the endocrine system gets pretty complex and the words get pretty big and things get murky, and it's pretty easy to get lost in those details. I want us to be able to come back to this image and get a breath of fresh air and relate those kind of complex ideas that we're learning to a big picture, and hopefully build associations that can help us really understand those concepts and then be able to utilize them in the future. So using our boy Leo's Mr. Vitruvian here, I'm going to draw in the main organs of the endocrine system. And in future videos, we'll be able to talk about them individually and really get to know their function. But for now, all I'm concerned with is clarifying the geography for you and just establishing a baseline context for their interaction within the body. So first up, we have the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. And I've drawn those in this kind of pinkish orange color, but the hypothalamus is a structure in the middle part of your brain, and the pituitary is a little gland that dangles beneath it. And they work together as the control center for the endocrine organs, and then ultimately a control center for a lot of the body as these chemical messages affect our homeostasis. And then right here in yellow, I've drawn the pineal gland. And the pineal gland secretes melatonin, which is a big factor in our sleep cycles and then our circadian rhythms. So moving down out of the brain, we're going to get to the thyroid gland. And the thyroid gland is a gland that sits on the front part of your trachea or your windpipe. And you can feel it if you put your fingers on your neck, kind of right near your Adam's apple, and you swallow, that organ that moves up and down, that's your thyroid gland. And so your thyroid gland is principally involved in your body's metabolism and kind of upregulating or downregulating your body's metabolism, which is important because metabolism is how our bodies get energy. And so behind the thyroid gland on the backside surface are 4 spots, and that's your parathyroid gland. And so I've drawn it as these kind of blue spots, but the parathyroid gland, the main function there is calcium levels in your blood, which become critical as they're involved in, bone formation and bone resorption, and several other functions within the body. But moving down, into kind of our abdomen, we've got the adrenal glands, and I've drawn them here in this blue on top of your kidneys. And the medical term for kidneys that gets used a lot is renal. You hear the renal system with your kidneys and your ureter and your bladder. But adjacent to the renal system, that's where that adrenal comes from, are the adrenal glands right on top. And the adrenal glands have a lot of functions. One of the bigger ones is controlling the fluid volume within your body and within your blood vessels. But they go as far as to function within the body's panic response too. So a lot of functions within the adrenal glands and the hormones that they secrete. Also in the abdomen is the pancreas. I've drawn it here in green. And the pancreas is pretty famous for regulating blood sugar with insulin and glucagon. And those hormones are secreted from specialized cells in the pancreas called islet cells and the islets of Langerhorn. And they control how much sugar is in your blood as opposed to in your cells. And they kind of function back and forth again to contribute to our body's homeostasis, or that baseline steady state. So, and then last but not least for our discussion are the gonads down in your pelvis. So for boys, those are your testes. For girls, they're your ovaries. And they have many functions from, your secondary sex characteristics all the way to initiating our bodies through different life phases like puberty and menopause. And so that's those are the hot list of endocrine organs that we're going to talk about. And as you can see, as you start to soak in their anatomy and draw in observations, you see that some of them are pretty close together, like the thyroid and the parathyroid, or the hypothalamus and the pituitary that dangles right beneath it. And some are pretty far apart. For instance, the pituitary interacts with the gonads, and that's quite a distance when you consider the size of these tiny microscopic chemical messages. And so I want to take a second to clarify a little vocabulary, and let me clear some space. There are 3 types of signals within the endocrine system, and although all of these organs are in the endocrine system, not all of them have an endocrine signal. And so the first type of endocrine signal in the body is the autocrine signal. And autocrine signals are signals that are received at the cell that produces them. And that's not necessarily a super intuitive thought at first, to think that a cell signals itself, but T cells in the immune system, they secrete a hormone, I believe it's called interleukin, that is received at the cell that produces it in order to bolster the immune function, to improve the immune function. And so that's an autocrine signal. The body also has paracrine signals. And paracrine signals are signals, those kind of chemical messenger signals that are received nearby. For example, the hypothalamus secretes hormones that signal the pituitary, and they're right next to each other. Super close, 2 super close small structures in the brain that are signaling each other. And so the term for that is paracrine signals. And then last but not least, we have endocrine signals. And endocrine signals are those classic hormones that signal and function at a distance. So the receptors for these signals are located a pretty good chunk away from where they're actually produced. And an example of that might be the pituitary stimulating the adrenal glands through adrenocorticotropic hormone. And so anyway, let me take us back quick here to to Mr. Vitruvian, and I want to end on this big picture, just as an introduction to the endocrine system and its layout within the human body, and we'll be able to discuss in the future more about the organs themselves and what their function is and how they relate to each other. But next up, I'm gonna talk more about what a hormone is and really get your mind rolling and get you a firm understanding of what a hormone is. So I will see you there.